to the Scaling Japan podcast, a podcast about how to grow your business from $100,000 and beyond in the land of the rising sun.
Welcome to the Scaling Japan podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Batino, and on today's episode, we have Younes Hairej, the CEO of Aokumo, which helps medium to large corporations simplify their cloud operations through their platform. We will dive into the topic of system integrators, or SIers, as they're called in Japan, which are a key component to any long-term expansion in Japan for software companies. So it's great to have you, Younes, and could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me. I came to Japan in 2000 on a Mombushu scholarship. I studied electrical engineering at Nagoya University. Then I earned my master at Tokyo University, or the University of Tokyo, Todai. Then joined Sony Ericsson, building software on Symbian and Android. I later joined Morgan Stanley Japan, where I spent 7 years building trading systems and risk and pricing engine for fixed income. Then joined Invest, a Japanese public company with an Australian subsidiary, now known as 26° Global Markets. I took on the role of CTO. Later, I became the group CIO of Invest, Inc., which is the group, the holding company. During my time at Invest, I got to know and work with many system integrators. One of my primary responsibilities was to transform the IT department from being vendor-centric to an in-house shop. One of our most important decisions was which part of the tech stack to bring in-house, which to outsource, and which to co-source. This meant keeping the SI, or the system integrator partners, who were aligned with our mission and goals and who could help us execute on our strategy. This was key decision because it impacted every other aspect of our roadmap. It was challenging, but we achieved great success. And a testament to the importance of choosing the right partners was when we faced a cyber or a DDoS attack within my first 90 days at Invest. This experience showed me what we needed to control and who we needed to partner with. It also showed us that while system integrators mean well, their solutions might not always be the best fit for a company's present and future needs. So having the right SI partnership is key to success. And building in-house is really not easy, but it can be transformative when done right. But you need the right partners to help you get there.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And so I guess moving on or getting started, could you tell us exactly what does a system integrator or a Japanese SIer do?
Sure. So as you mentioned, especially in Invest, I worked with many system integrators, small and big. Let's first just define what they do. So who are these system integrators? So a Japanese system integrator, or SIer, is a company that helps businesses with their IT needs. They're not just consultants, of course, but strategic partners. So they work with the businesses to understand their challenges and opportunities and develop custom IT solutions. So they also provide ongoing support, which is really, really important. So SIers are well-versed in the Japanese business landscape. They understand the cultural nuances and can tailor their solutions accordingly. So they're also technically proficient, of course, not all of them, and can deliver high-quality services. Now, I want to give you an example, which I experienced. So imagine you have a team of engineers and developers who are building in-house software. You also have an IT operations team that works with both the internal team and external SIers. So you might think that the IT ops team would prefer to work with the internal team, but in reality, they often prefer to work with SIers. This is because SIers make things a lot easier for the ops team. They provide detailed documentation and support. They also anticipate problems, and they take proactive measures to address them. So in contrast, the the internal team might not have the resources or expertise to provide the same level of support. So really, this highlights the importance of setting clear expectations and using, methods like DevOps to unify teams. And it also shows the importance of leadership in setting the vision and objectives when building in-house software.
Yeah, so this is topic of system integrators. They have system integrators in the US and other countries, but oftentimes when I'm dealing with startups who are entering the Japanese market, when I mention about system integrators, they're usually surprised because in a lot of cases they've never had to deal with them.
Right.
And so I guess that leads me to my next question is, so they do exist in the US. There's a good chance you might not run into one unless, you're doing a corporate, but usually corporate, they often have an in-house team. But how significant are they in Japan?
Right. So huge, the short answer. So to put it into perspective, the total revenue of SIers in Japan is estimated at 8 trillion JPY, which is about 60 billion USD. And this is, I think, probably 2021 or so from a Salesforce article. And I think the figure is larger now, which is a staggering 80 times that of SaaS revenue in the country. So this difference underscores the dominant influence SIers have in the Japanese IT landscape. And the top 10 Japanese SIers account for about 50% of the market.
Wow.
Yep. I mean, if you want me to explain a little bit why that is, I can give some explanations why they became this, dominant in the markets. But
sure, yeah, if you could share a few points.
So I think there are a couple of factors. The first one is the risk-averse business culture. So Japanese businesses traditionally lean towards risk-averse, as you probably know. So this predisposition often leads them to outsource IT requirements to third-party providers, such as SIers, who they perceive as more reliable and experienced. The second factor is government-driven IT spending. So historically, the Japanese government has been a significant driver of IT expenditure. So this has carved out a vast and profitable niche for SIers, allowing them to amass deep expertise, especially in government IT projects. And the third one is education system. So I think the Japanese education system has a strong emphasis on producing engineers and technicians. So this focus has resulted in substantial pool for skilled IT professionals available for SIers.
Gotcha. It makes sense because, or sometimes in the West, like CEOs, they'll use services like McKinsey for consulting. And if McKinsey is wrong, they can, rather than the CEO taking the blame personally, he can blame McKinsey. And similar in this case, if the IT project goes wrong, they can blame the big SIer and avoid responsibility. Yeah, it makes sense for the government spending where they get the big contracts and they lend it out to a subcontractor, which we talked a lot about in our Selling to the Government podcast series.
It's very true. I mean, even in my experience, we had, when we had incidents, for example, the blame always goes to the SIs, not the ops team. So it's actually interesting dynamics. So you mentioned the other regions like the States. So other regions, you see like SaaS providers have a more pronounced presence, right? But I think the landscape in Japan is evolving, and as businesses grow more acquainted with like cloud computing and modern technologies, we see a noticeable shift towards SaaS solutions and also building in-house. So while this trend is expected to gain momentum, I think SIers will continue to play a pivotal role in the Japanese IT sector. And additionally, there is also a rise in boutique SIers that cater to niche industries such as IoT and cloud.
Gotcha. What type of companies do they help typically?
So they help these, for example, I'll give you an example of a boutique SIer, class method, for example. So they help clients migrate to the cloud, for example, cloud AWS, or they even manage their account. So and they help companies also, build or start in-house teams, for example. So these, they're very Cloud Method, for example, is really focused on AWS and on the cloud. So
SIers, so they do exist in other countries, but how do they really come about in Japan?
So actually, I didn't know this until I was doing some research for this podcast. But so the history of SIers in Japan can be traced back in the 1960s. At that time, the Japanese government was concerned by the growing dominance of IBM in the Japanese IT market. So to counteract this, the government encouraged the formation of domestic system integrators that could provide IT services to Japanese businesses. And the first SIs were formed by major Japanese IT companies such as Fujitsu, Hitachi, and NEC. So these were like vertically integrated, providing, as we discussed earlier, a wide range of IT services. The government support for SIs was essential for their early growth. So the government provided financial assistance as well as technical and regulatory support. And also, the government also encouraged the formation of industry associations, which helped SIs to share information and best practices. Now, in the 1970s and 80s, the Japanese SI market grew rapidly. And this was due to a number of factors, including like increasing adoption of IT by Japanese businesses, the government's continued support for SIs, and the availability of skills, as we discussed earlier. And in the 19s, that's where the SI market faced some challenges, such as the bursting of the Japanese bubble economy and the rise of outsourcing to low-cost countries. However, the SI market has since recovered, and I think it is now one of the largest in the world.
What are some of the pros to using a system integrator?
Oh, this is a good question. So the pros, there are many. Experience and expertise, of course. So SIers have a wealth of experience and expertise in IT, so they can help businesses adopt to new technologies, improve their IT infrastructure, and solve complex IT problems. They're also a one-stop shop. So SIers can provide a wide range of IT services from design, implementation, maintenance, continuous support. And of course, this can save businesses time and money. Project management, of course. Risk mitigation. So SIers can help businesses to mitigate the risk associated with IT projects, as we discussed earlier. Innovation. Some SIers, like NRI, for example, can help businesses to innovate by providing access to new technologies and expertise. And then they can help them, adopt new ways of working, such as agile development. We see this, I think, some of the selling points of some of the SIs now is the ability to help clients or to help companies move to these, new way of, not new, but agile development methodologies and so on. And then, of course, reduce cost. So SIers can help businesses to reduce costs by providing economies of scale and also sharing best practices.
Now that we've heard the things that they excel at, what are some of the cons of using a system integrator in Japan?
The cons. So, first, cost. Some SIs are really, really expensive. And this is because, of course, the cost covers employees, infrastructure, R&D, and so on. One big cons to me was lack of flexibility. So SIers often are really not flexible comparing to in-house IT teams. And this is because, of course, they have to follow a set of standards, processes, and procedures. In fact, we had to move away from one SI because exactly the lack of flexibility. A simple change, for example, config change on a load balancer would take months and cost a lot of money. On AWS, you can do it within 5 minutes. So yeah, lack of flexibility, dependency, absolutely, and that's really a big one. At least to us. So they say, if you want to really your partner, if they're not at the level of speed you expect, you're just going to go as fast as they are. So it's one big cons. The other one is dependency. So businesses that rely heavily on SIers can become too dependent on them, and this can make it really difficult for businesses to innovate and adapt to change. And so again, another one is risk of vendor lock-in. If a business becomes too dependent on a single SIer, it may really be locked in. I've seen this happening. And it would be hard to switch, or too expensive. So that's another risk or another cost. The last one is just familiarity with modern technologies and open source software. The Japanese government is increasingly promoting the use of open source software. So this could pose a challenge to SIers who rely on proprietary software. In the past, SIers have been able to charge a premium for their expertise in proprietary software. However, as open source software becomes more popular, SIers will need to find new ways to differentiate themselves.
One of the common challenges I see with my consulting clients is not having any staff internally who can drive marketing strategy and execution to the next level. This really limits the growth trajectory of a company, especially for a leader like you that wants to go from 30 million to 500 million yen a year and does not have the time to spend years learning through trial and error. To solve this problem, I'm launching a marketing agency that can help companies like yours to increase leads and closing rates through SEO, Google Maps, content marketing, and websites that convert. Head over to scalingyourcompany.com and book a free consultation. Let's talk about what your business needs are, where your current strategy is letting you down, and how we can help you see real results with the methods I've successfully implemented at multiple companies myself. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, I can see the lock-in being a huge problem. Like, if you were to change a vendor just for them just to understand the system itself, because it's completely customized.
Absolutely.
If it was open source, if they understood that, let's say like Linux or something like that, they would at least have a base understanding and would know what to expect with like an open source base. But
yeah. I absolutely agree. And so we had actually a problem before because our system that was built by an SIer was heavily customized, and it kind of diverged from their package solution because they keep upgrading it, and it was really heavily customized. So and it fell behind, and I think we hit the end of support, and so we're trying to find other solutions or increase the support, and that came at premium. So it was quite stressful before we moved entirely in-house. So yeah.
And I think for the new vendor, just to even understand the current solution, that's very expensive. Or in other cases, I'm sure sometimes companies just have to rebuild it from zero.
Absolutely, yeah. Another cons that I really think is important and is actually kind of defining a little bit, the IT landscape now. On a macro level, the concentration of tech talent in SIers is really a major issue in Japan, and this is because it limits the ability of businesses to innovate and adapt, and it also makes it difficult for businesses to build in-house IT capabilities. So the trend of companies building in-house capabilities is a positive one. It will help to reduce the reliance on SIers and make businesses more agile. However, of course, this is a long-term process. It will take time for business to develop the necessary skills and expertise.
So there is that big macro impact, especially in the employment front as well. But how does that impact startups?
So again, good question. I think so. The good thing about startup is you have accessibility. You're nimble, so you use modern technology, software, open source, and we see younger people, how we call it, interested in learning these new technologies. And so there is, we see, as personally, I see shift. I see, because the working for a SIer, of course, it exposes you to many projects, but in most cases, you don't get to do the meaty, the interesting stuff. So you end up with, even working with the SIers, you end up doing really not so interesting stuff. So we see people moving from SIers to startups because they just want to learn, and that's where they get exposure to technology. It impacts the startups in two ways, negatively and positively. Negatively, because still the pool is of tech talent available is less than what SIers have, but they also take advantage of the fact that they can work with new technologies, open source, so they attract talent who are interested in doing interesting stuff.
It's because I did hear that it's sometimes if a programmer came from the SI world, sometimes their knowledge of new programming languages and or maybe lack of knowledge of new programming languages and lack of knowledge of using open source was a big demerit.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. It really depends on SIers. Like some of the SIers, they do use modern technologies like NRI. They even contribute to open source, but in most cases they lack that expertise in modern technologies, and so you need some kind of reskilling in that case. And for startup, sometimes that's costly. So it can be a challenge if you don't have, especially if you don't have a big pool of IT talent, just because most of the tech talent work for SIers.
So let's say we'll go into more of like selling to an SIer later, but I guess from the angle of choosing an SIer based on your experience, how could we select the right one? So
I think when choosing an SIer, it's really important to consider the experience and expertise in the specific technologies and solutions, especially when you look at your technology stack. So you want to look at what you need to outsource and what you need to keep inside or build inside. So that's one. The ability to meet your specific needs, of course, and the requirements, the track record of success, the release cycle and decision-making cycle. As I mentioned earlier, for some SIers, getting things out can take months. So if you're okay with that, then that's fine. And then really just communication and collaboration style. Some SIers would prefer just to work through a project manager. Some, would bring the developer. So it really depends on your culture, your working style. And so these are some of the factors I think are important when you choose, when you try to, to choose the NSI.
And from these points, are there any kind of quick tips or any danger signs?
So really, quick tips is just, for us, for example, at Invest, we were clear about what we were going to build in-house and what we will keep or outsource. So what we did, we went to our SI partnerships and we looked at the scope. So we reduced the scope of some of the big SIs to focus only on the things that they do well. For example, like infrastructure layer or for example, cloud or storage or these sort of things. So it's really important to first understand what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to control, what you're trying to build in-house, and then choose the SIs based on their skills and their expertise. And I think, again, as I mentioned, another tip is really just to make sure that they're fast enough to match your speed. Because if you're pushing changes, twice a month or 3 times a month, but you need to wait for approval from your SIer to change configuration on your network, for example, then you end up slow. So these are important.
So I guess for those who are searching for an SIer to use for their company, or someone who's looking for an SIer who they can partner with to sell their solution, could you tell us a little bit more about who are some of the famous integrators, and maybe just some big ones in general, and maybe some industry-specific examples?
Sure. So I think the general big players, as you probably know, you have Fujitsu, is the largest Japanese SI, with over 130,000 employees, I believe. NEC is another heavyweight with over, I believe, 100,000 employees. You have NTT Data, you have KDDI's, NTT Communications. They're primarily, telecommunication giants. Actually, I worked with both. They're really great for network and corporate infrastructure, especially if you need to manage on-premise and cloud infra, and you need, direct connect, routing, and all that. For industry-specific leaders, again, for example, in fintech, companies like NTT Data, Simplex, JMass, NRI are making significant inroads. For health tech, like Fujitsu and NEC are often the go-to choices. Cybersecurity, you have Trend Micro, NTT Security, and NEC. And then you have also independent SIers like Otsuka, Shokai, Fujitsu Soft, TIS, DTS that have carved a niche for themselves. You have consulting firms like Accenture and NRI. Also, they play a big role in the SI landscape. And then you have the, the spin-offs from major corporations that have become significant players in their own right. For instance, CTC from Itochu, SCSK from Sumitomo, and then you have Yamato System Software Kaihatsu from Yamato. And for those interested in a comprehensive list of SIs in Japan, I'd recommend checking out OpenWorks website, which provides a detailed list categorized by field. So we see more boutique, and also we see more boutique shops like Uhuru for IoT, Class Method, as I mentioned earlier, for software and cloud. Especially they manage AWS account for clients.
I am curious though. Yes, I think you might have more information, but now that you mentioned the list, how can we actually find system integrators in Japan?
So finding a system integrator can be approached through both online and offline channels. I think online platforms like Facebook can be surprisingly effective. Offline, attending industry-specific conferences and events is a great strategy. This includes events like DX Expo, for example, AWS Summit, Interop Tokyo. Additionally, seminars organized by media outlets such as Nikkei X Tech, for example, Minabi Tech Plus, Diamond Signals, IT Leaders, and DDNet can be valuable. These gatherings not only provide insights, but also offer networking opportunities to connect with potential SIer partners.
So yeah, I think a lot of the companies who would like to enter the Japan market, software companies, I think they're kind of curious, like, so how can I get an SIer as a potential partner as a foreign company entering the Japanese market? Do you have any tips for us that could help us on that area?
Collaborating with a system integrator can be a game changer for businesses. But like any partnership, of course, it demands careful navigation, right? So first, it's really crucial to do your homework. Research potential SIs that resonate with your business objectives and have a solid reputation in the domain. And then once you've shortlisted a few, clearly define roles and responsibilities to ensure that there's no ambiguity down the line. Now, when it comes to, of course, financials, revenue split can vary. Typically, an SI may take anywhere from 10 to 30% of the revenue. but of course, this is negotiable. It largely depends on the services they're offering and the intricacies of the project. And of course, both parties need to be on the same page regarding the level of commitment, be it in terms of finance, time, or resources. So I think kickstarting the partnership requires really alignment, organize like initial meetings to set shared goals and expectations. If the SI isn't acquainted with your product, I think it's important to invest time in training them. This is where the importance of support and documentation comes into play. I really cannot stress enough how pivotal, robust support and comprehensive documentation are in this partnership. I've been in countless meetings where the level of support and the quality of documentation have been the deciding factors, even if the product wasn't the market leader. So I would say equip your SI with all the necessary documentation, from text packs to promotion materials, and ensure that they have a clear support channel to address any queries or challenges.
And this is the obvious question, but I ask it just so you can, I think people need to hear, but does it have to be in Japanese?
It does, unfortunately. I've seen executives really drop in vendors if they don't have any material in Japanese. So, and most of Japanese do not even read English emails. So that's something I want to say. So I think really communication is also really important. Regular check-ins are a must, whether it's through a platform like Slack, Teams. Ensure you have a system in place for continuous dialogue and feedback. Depending on the project's intensity, this could be daily, weekly, or even bi-weekly. And always prioritize clarity in these communications, of course. I mean, this is common sense. I think a few additional pointers to keep in mind. If you're partner with an SI from a different culture background, I think really, especially in Japan, understanding the cultural sensitivities and business etiquette is really important. So trust is paramount in Japan. So fostering a transparent relationship where both parties are, candid about their strength, weakness, and expectations, and really teaming up with a system integrator can significantly elevate your business. But it's important to remember it's really a two-way street that requires, effort and mutual respect. Of course, all this is common sense, but in Japan, it's very important that the subtle things, the cultural nuances are quite important. So having, understanding those nuances is quite important. And also, I would also say that understanding how your solution fits in their package, because sometimes SIs think in terms of fixing solution, like in terms of package. So helping them understand how your solution will fit in their package is important, because when they talk to their clients, they usually want to sell the package, not just one piece of solution. So helping them see that your solution can improve their package, or you can even tell them that your solution bundled with their services can provide a really big value. So this is also important to keep in mind. It's sort of like a omoyari. You're thinking a step ahead and see how you can your solution can benefit their clients and stuff. So I think this is again, this is just based from my experience. So I hope there are some insights in what I just said.
Yeah, so a lot of startups, they're kind of looking for like, what's that magic kind of knowledge? They understand it's hard, it takes time. But I guess for the Japan case, do you have any tips for them on, I think you mentioned ways of finding them, contacting them. And I think you mentioned ways like, so once they get the call, I think you've kind of outlined a really solid playback. But any tips for them to get to the meeting?
All right.
So now that I know where and how to contact them, how can I actually get a meeting set up?
Basically, you're not well known, right? And you want to partner with an SIer, and so how do you?
Yeah. So imagine one of the other companies from 500 Global.
Yeah.
Asked you, how can I actually get the meeting?
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I understand. I'm just trying to. So because usually when you go to these events, you meet these SIers, so you get contacts, right? So you reach out to them, and sometimes some of these SIs, they have in their website, they have partners programs, so you can reach out and explain your solutions. I think many of the SIs now have those, partner programs.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Scaling Japan. In addition to serving as your fine host, I also provide advisory and coaching services to business owners who want to 2x, 5x, and even 10x their business. So stop holding your company and your team and your employees back, and let me help you and your company scale. Find more information at scalingyourcompany.com. Now back to the episode. So you've outlined ways we could find system integrators, through like the internet, the databases, meeting them at events for like the offline aspects. You've also shared with us, if we were to have a call with them, how we can communicate our services well and stand out, and so we can kind of get the deal. But so I guess my next question would be, how can I actually go? So now that I know where to contact them, how can I actually get them to give us a meeting as a startup, someone who's unproven in Japan?
Right. So I think we both know that here in Japan, cold calls do not work, right? Building a relationship, meeting them at these these events is really important, and it helps if you have, for example, success stories in your home countries with for example a Japanese branch there, or something that connects you and to Japan and gets you to showcase that, and of course a slide deck in Japanese, and so these are quite important, and obviously relationships, like sometimes going through like your network, if you know a partners like us, for example, who speak the language and have access to some SIs that can help bridge or then to other partners also, I think would work. But definitely cold call rarely work in Japan, as you probably know.
Yeah, especially as an unknown. Yeah, the introduction is really the big one. But you're going to the events, if you have a good product, it does. I've heard stories of it working out.
I do think events like DX Expo, for example, like Interrupt Tokyo, these are very good events to meet the SIers. Then even show your solution or your brochure, and hopefully in Japanese, and discuss. And again, it helps when you think in terms of how your solution fit into their offerings, right? Because again, they think in terms of packaging, they think in terms of it's like they want to be the one-stop shop. So how does your solution fit in that? It helps when you have that story ready, so you can share it. It helps if it's of course in Japanese, in the language they understand.
Cool, thanks for that. And so for the startups listening that you do want to enter the Japanese market, the system integrators will definitely, after you get your initial customers, they will, through direct sales, they're going to play an integral part in your Japan expansion strategy. And so I want to ask Younes, why are system integrators so important for a long-term Japan expansion strategy for a tech company?
So there are many reasons. First, SIers have a deep understanding of the Japanese business landscape. So they're well versed in the intricacies of corporate structure, the specific needs of Japanese businesses, and the decision-making process and cycles that are unique to the country, right? So this knowledge allows them to bridge the gap between tech companies and their potential clients in Japan. Plus, SIers have already established trust with many clients in the Japanese market. So they've done a lot of their groundwork, building relationships and understanding client needs, which means tech companies can leverage these established connections to their advantage. To illustrate the significance of SIers, we can look at some real-world example. For example, Zoom, a globally recognized video conferencing platform, sees a majority of 60% of its sales in Japan coming from partners rather than direct sales. Domestic giant like Saibos, who are excellent at B2B marketing and sales, also see 48% of sales coming from partners. So this highlights the pivotal role SIers play in driving sales and expanding markets reach for tech companies in the region. So another telling example is Otsuka Shokai, a partner of Microsoft. When Microsoft transitioned to cloud-based services, they initially believed they could bypass the partner channel for sales. However, this decision led to a significant drop in sales for their product, Microsoft 365 in Japan. This incident underscores the importance of SIers in the Japanese market, tech market. Otsuka Shokai was named Microsoft's Japan Partner of the Year in 2023.
Microsoft thought they could do it by themselves. Salesforce thought they could do it by themselves. Maybe Zoom at the beginning, I'm not sure, but both both were humbled. Both U.S. software giants were humbled, and went the integrator sales partner route, just to show you like even they need the support for their expansion strategy. And so one other data point I wanted to share with the listeners is that the software as a service revenue in 2020 in Japan was $750, 750 million. System integrators was 60 billion. So the revenue of system integrators was 80 times software as a service. And so so those entering the Japan market, like I mentioned, it's in the beginning, you either use product-led growth to get some initial customers like Notion, Figma, Slack, or you're going to have to get some direct sales. And after you do that a bit, you'll have some documentation. You'll kind of understand what Japanese customers want. And then you'll get system integrators who might end up being 80%, 70%, and even as much as 50% of your sales revenue in Japan when you start expanding. Cool. So thank you, Younes, very much for talking to us about this topic. It's been on my, I'll say, wish list for a while. And the more that I'm involved in startup accelerators in Japan, it's really taught me the importance of a company understanding system integrators before they make a big investment in Japan.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. It is really an important topic when entering Japan. So I hope your audience find some insights in this discussion. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And do you have any last words or anything you'd like to tell the audience or promote?
If any of the startups need some help, we're happy to work with them. We're happy to also introduce them to our partner network in Japan. So wish them all the luck. Thank you.
Cool. And could you maybe tell a quick bit of what Aokumo does?
Yes, sure. So we're a cloud infrastructure company. So we help companies, especially those who build software in-house, manage deploy and manage their microservices. So our product is a plug-and-play AI-powered lightweight platform designed to help companies deploy and operate microservices faster, cheaper, and smarter using our AI technologies. By understanding software configurations and analyzing system logs, our platform offers actionable insights, enabling enterprise to address issues faster, even without deep technical expertise. So the platform empowers businesses to deploy, manage, and scale software effortlessly, focusing on delivering in parallel customer value and driving business growth.
Cool. Thank you very much, Younes.
Thank you.